The wind force shares many of the features of the gravity force in its operation. In this case, though, the wind is generally treated as a repulsion of the particles away from the gizmo, rather than being a pull towards it. The main addition to this force is the introduction of a turbulence field that can be used to make your particles move in a perturbed manner. Indeed, it's possible to actually only use the turbulence feature of this force to add some chaotic movement to your particles. Let's quickly run through the parameters that we have for this, and we'll actually see how we can use it. Again, I'm using the force viewer, which again is very useful for actually seeing how this particular force takes effect. We'll just freeze it there. You can see there we have our force. I'll just make the icon a little bit bigger. And you can see at the moment I've actually got it set up so that it actually has 0 strength in everything. It's actually having no effect on anything at the moment. So let's have a look at the strength value first. This works in a very similar manner to the way gravity works. If I increase the strength, you can see that the vectors on our force viewer are actually changing. I'll just unfreeze the force viewer. Oops. There we go. And I'll just lock my selection so I can't leave go of the force. You can see it a little bit more clearly now. If I increase the force, as you can see, the vectors are actually pointing outwards away from the gizmo. So you can see we're actually pushing our particles away. If I put that down to a lower value and then press play, there go our particles. You can see they're being blown outwards away from the center. This is by the wind. I'll put it back down to 0. Now I'm using a negative value, and now they're being pulled inwards. So now we have a suction rather than a wind actually being blown outwards. So if I press play, there you go, you can see our particles are being sucked inwards. Put that back to 0. Then we have decay, so we can actually have the particles being blown outwards, and then we can actually put a decay on that, and there's our decay indicator again, because we have range indicators turned on. Now, again, as I increase the amount of decay, you can see that this indicator drops in, and beyond that you can see there is a drop off in the amount of force that's applied. So now if I press play, you can see that the particles closer to the gizmo actually get blown more forcefully than the particles further away. So you can actually use the decay. That's pretty intuitive, I think. So that's basically it for the actual wind part of the force, and as I said, it's very, very similar to the gravity force in the way it can be applied. All you have to do use basically is negative values, and all of a sudden you have basically a gravity force again. Again, you can choose it to be planar, or you can choose it to be spherical. You've got that same option again, and again you can see you've got these range indicators with the fall off happening outside them again. Okay, so that's it. We'll just turn off these two values, and we'll now have a look at the actual wind turbulence values, which you can see here. The first value we have is turbulence, and that's actually how much turbulence is applied to your particle. So let's just increase that value. And you can see it's actually having no effect at the moment. And that's because we haven't actually got a scale to our turbulence, which is what is needed here. In this particular area, in this wind area, which actually has all the turbulence values, you only really need two values to actually get a real turbulence effect, and that is turbulence and scale. So you need a strength and you need a size. If you don't have a size, there's actually no size to the turbulence, and it doesn't really have any effect. Now, I've always found this particular force to be pretty counterintuitive, in that the very, very small scales give you very, very large turbulence fields. So I'll actually demonstrate that now. As you can see, what's actually showing here is, if we actually reduce, let's actually reduce the amount of turbulence, you can actually see that we have a very large field of turbulence going on here. If I increase this a little bit more, you can actually get an idea of the sort of forces here. Here you can see a knot of turbulence, and here you can see a knot of turbulence. I'll actually just turn off the particles so we can see this a bit more clearly. And if I increase the scale to 0.2, you can see that the turbulence has actually become more turbulent. So it's actually the field has become smaller, the scale has become smaller, and you can see these holes have actually become smaller. As I increase the scale, you can see that the holes are actually getting smaller and smaller and smaller and smaller. So our particles now will actually become much more chaotic. So if you want to have very smooth turbulence on your particles, use very, very small scale.